Trump being indicted, and I'm just going to press on. So a couple of things here, and again, my apologies. Thanks for hanging out in this. Sorry, we've got 7 minutes of dead air. But the thing that I always kind of draw back to, and I've had this conversation with some people, believe it or not, the Whiskey and Bagels is not a political show. We just like to talk about things that everybody kind of has in commonality. Well, one of the things that are just, with love him or hate him, Donald Trump is one of the most recognizable people in the history of the world at this point. In our current lexicon, in our atmosphere, this dude is not only taking over the dynamic of kind of like what he's about or how he's about, and the way that he was brought up, the way that he was designed as a person, to have somebody that was basically taught how to be institutionally racist. Let's call it like it is. He was brought up to understand how to show one thing and then exploit another. Constantly. 1 foot on the gas, 1 foot on the brake. My regards, Sammy Hagar. But what you realize is that he's the perfect idiot. And by the way, I had a lot of high hopes when this guy first took office, not because I thought he was a good person, but because I thought he would rip the Band-Aid off. He's inadvertently actually proving... Sorry, Lady Ann. He's actually proving that our system works. Love him or hate him, he is actually somebody that is showing us that the United States is a country of laws. He is showing us that he isn't above the law. And as much as, E. Jean Carroll, I think that indictment and that judgment was very... How do I want to say this? People have... people like Donald Trump, famous people, whatever category it is, and no, you don't have the right to do whatever it is. But you start to realize that, like, sometimes people are going to come after you. And sometimes people have an entire legal team to make things go away. And it might cost you a couple of $1,000s. And guess what? There are people in this world that will chase after people like Donald Trump. Put them in a position of compromise and then have yeah, baby. I'm doing a little producer action here. No, it's not suddenly. What I did is I actually put a cap on the thing, and I figured out how to do it. Oh, ha, ha, hee, hee, ho, ha, ha. I run a media company. Anyways, so now I can really take off, guys. Thanks for sticking around. Thank you. So let's knock this out of the park. So people like Donald Trump sometimes have a team around them to say, oh, this person said this person said that, and it'd be like, well, it's not really worth dragging you through the mud. It's not really worth dragging me through the mud. I don't want that kind of reputation. It's a he said, she said thing. It's a whatever, right? And of course, I'm talking about the Stormy Daniels thing. And by the way, in the normal course of action, he has probably paid off multiple women. I'll just say it that way. He has probably paid off multiple people for any other types of misconduct, and it's famous about his wrongdoing with, selling contractors short, giving them a $2 million bid and then, paying them $500,000. And then they end up going belly up because they have all these employees to pay because they're on the hook for that. Donald Trump, though, has a history of a lack of accountability, right? So again, I'm not here to bash the guy. I'm just telling you public record, right? If you're going to come in here and defend him, you need to defend why it is that he was conditioned the way that he was and why the Republican Party would think that he is the perfect person. The truth is that the exposure in 2016 was this simple. He was the guy that could beat Hillary or be the sacrificial lamb to Hillary. See also Russia. See also whatever. And what I started to say in the other live, which I will take down, so don't go back and see it, I'll talk about it here. I did not support Donald Trump when he was screwing contractors and making bad business deals and pulling out of things like that. I know people personally that did business with Donald Trump that got left holding the bill for advertising, for products that weren't delivered, for all sorts of things. He was generally known as just a dipshit business guy that might have dreamed big and then looked for every reason not to pay you. Fair enough, right? I do not support him during that time. I thought The Apprentice was actually an incredibly shitty show full of D-listers and people that he could exploit. That's basically what it was. And by the way, anybody that has any business chops at all, when you watch The Apprentice, you realize that the only thing he was looking for was praise for his brands, not your product. And by the way, he set up people for not having success, for failure, for that entire show. He took people that were not equipped to run a business to say, what do you have? 1 out of 5 of those people could pull it off to a certain acumen. The rest of them made fools of themselves. And talked about how hard it was, and it's fun. We have to start looking at us as a country as to why that was entertainment. What's entertaining about people falling flat on their face? Well, here's the clown, everybody, making the asshole symbol. We have to really start looking at ourselves, because I did not support Donald Trump in 2016. I did not. I also had a really hard time thinking Hillary Clinton could run this country. I was like, really? This is the best we can do? Because it's a Shark Tank. Sorry, it's a better show, Donald. Where only people that survive end up pulling the strings behind the scenes. You had a career politician who had the Democratic Party in her back pocket. I'm sorry, Barry Sanders, you absolutely got screwed there. And then you had Donald Trump, who didn't have political clout, but he knew Vladimir Putin. He had done business with him. He knew the Saudis. He knew several key people around the world that had technology that he could use. Am I accusing him of something here? Probably. Because somebody that's willing to do that is willing to cheat on the election. Ready to get going? I did not support him in 2020 because I thought he did an incredibly horrible job in upholding the Constitution, which is what his job is. My opinion of Donald Trump isn't because I don't like him. My opinion of Donald Trump is because he's an idiot. Why did we elect an idiot? Mirror time, everybody. I'm going to tell you why, and we're going to go to his chart and talk about it. You see how I did that, everybody? I'm sorry. I just kind of did a little love there. Oh, that's me. Oh, I'm back. Just kidding. All right, so we're going to go ahead and say goodbye to him for a little while. By the way, I'm in the Love Studio. If you're in upstate New York, you're going to be looking for an email from me tomorrow morning. I have a free event here on Saturday. I'm going to do a little sound healing. This gong over my shoulder, I'm going to do a little Tesla action, and we're going to do the modern day cowboy meditation. Come on in, sit down, unplug. Give yourself a half hour, 45 minutes. Let yourself simply be. Oh, by the way, I'm also going to be recording it, and my members are going to see it. Haven't forgotten about you guys. Thank you for subscribing. Donald J. Trump. What a day. By the way, his birthday's coming up. What do we get him? What do we get him? A diamond-studded ankle bracelet, maybe? I'm a little sarcastic, and those of you that think I'm taking joy in this, I'm not taking joy in Donald Trump's fall. I'm taking joy in the idea that our system isn't broken. Because trust me, I really think a lot of people were dismayed with the idea that he was going to walk all over what this country is. At the same time, he's a reflection of what this country is. He's a bombastic asshole. He's somebody that has never been held accountable. He wasn't hugged as a child. He didn't get the pony. Blah, 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 blah. Here we are. Here we are. This is our guy, everyone. You want to know why we haven't evolved? This is the best we can do when everybody weighs in consensus. It's a good time for us to do a gut check. By the way, this is plugged into the Pluto returns. for the United States. This is plugged in for our own realization of who we are and what we're about. Are we going to fall as a republic? I don't know. If you asked me 3-4 years ago, I would have said, it don't look good, honey. However, when I see an indictment, when I see the good guys kind of win, and again, I really want to express this, guys. I don't talk a lot about what I do kind of behind the scenes and the phone calls I get from state police and other law enforcement people. I work with them to help them find people. I work with them when there is dire straits. There are good people in the world. Anybody that villainizes the FBI, the CIA, law enforcement at any level, carte blanche, is an asshole. Anyone that doesn't recognize the fact that sometimes there's just bad apples, but those bad apples usually don't stick around. The vast majority of people that are on the good guy side are actually good guys. Do they make mistakes? Absolutely. That's the human element. Are they horrible people? No, not necessarily. But the ones that are and get to skate because of technicalities and union representations or whatever the case may be. And again, I'm not knocking unions. I'm just saying sometimes they're wrong and they got to push them out front and let us take them. Donald Trump, for whatever reason, has been the scapegoat of all of his crimes. I'll say that again. He has become the scapegoat of all of his crimes. How does he then become the victim? Now, the backstory of all of this is that the Department of Justice basically said, Donald, you took some stuff. You know, we do the little reconciliation down here, and you were boasting about having some files. Turns out they're missing. Could we have them back? And then he said, yeah, sure, we'll coordinate that with you. Get that IKEA cabinet built so we can hide them. And then he had the audacity to say, hey, Mr. Lawyer, go ahead and take a look right over there in that room. That's where I would have kept all that stuff. Yeah, no need to look anywhere else. And then he put that lawyer in peril. And then he put the 5 other lawyers that were there in peril. And then he put his employees at risk for lying to said lawyer and then otherwise government. He basically made a chess match and then put all of the pawns and all of the horses and all of the bishops and all of the rooks in front of him to say it was everybody else. Meanwhile, he sat back here and going, I have Iran invasion information here. I'm going to go ahead and be the intuitive guy in the room. Anybody worth their salt would have looked at that and said, oh, I got to get rid of this. I shouldn't have it. Anybody that actually respects the Constitution, this country, and any of the veterans that have ever fought in this country would have said, I need to protect this with my life now, and I need to get it to the people that can protect it long term. I am here to tell you that without any evidence, based on solely on intuition, he was nefarious with not only that, but many other documents that were sitting there. To him, it was a capitalization game, as it was with everything else. Oh, and by the way, I spent a little time down in New York City a couple of weeks ago. I had a chance to drive down that way. And I drove, actually, I wasn't even there, but I drove past the Trump links. And guess what? Guess what? That's where Ivana is buried. He buried his wife for a tax write-off, everybody. This is who we're dealing with. Right? Somebody reminded me of it. I shouldn't say I drove past it, but somebody reminded me that she was buried there. And I'm like, I want to drive down there. And I'm like, I need to plan another roadie. You know, here's the entire kind of scope of all of this. And I know you guys are absorbing, the chart here. But what I'm about to show you is the moment in time and opportunity for justice to be served. I'm also going to tell you 100% that this dude is 100% a flight risk. 100%. So we've got here in the 10th house. By the way, what are you getting him for his birthday? It's a week away. Go ahead and put in your comments below. That's kind of funny. What to get DJT? Now, in his natal chart, he is conjunct here with not only his North Node, but also Uranus. Right? Here in his 10th house, which means that he's very much a public figure. He's meant for destiny, for greatness. He's also meant to be a little bit of a rebellion. Is that what we see in him? Is that what we're so attracted to? Maybe. But right now, the sun is shining. It is shining so bright, and it's right over Uranus. Bam! Placement number 1, the sun over his Uranus in his 10th house. The public undoing, the public rebellion, the public going, nah, I don't think so. Let's shine a little light on your nefarious activity. Yeah, it'll match his skin. How'd you like that, Martha? Placement number 2. Now I'm going to take a look at the 12th house. And by the way, Pluto in the 12th house means a bit of his power base is either going to be way awesome or way terrible, right? Commissary challenge, Dollar Tree toilet paper. I freaking love you. Got ramen noodles. You know what I'm going to do? I got coupons to McDonald's so he can get... Isn't that the worst? I'm going to give him coupons of McDonald's money that has pictures of the Big Mac on it so he can look at it. Anyways, so in the 12th house, right now we have Mars and Venus doing this dance. And it just became conjunct about 18 hours ago, where Mars moves at a certain steady pace. Venus comes in, right? And it's over his Pluto. Mars is over his natal Pluto. By the way, Mars is also in his 12th house, so it's automatically got some action going on with it. Mars in Leo, Venus in Leo. It's a love-hate relationship, and also it's kind of exposing yourself to how unbalanced he might be. Right? Remember that scene in, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? In Tommy Boy, when they're eating the ketchup packets, where he's eating the fries and he's eating the ketchup. Come on. My kid saw that and absolutely did it, and I'm like, isn't that disgusting? He goes, this might be the best thing ever happened to me. I'm like, all right. No, inmates don't get McDonald's, and I don't care which prison you go to. They do get conjugal visits, which is a little weird because that too will probably run him about $300,000 in order to have it belong. Sorry. So in this 12th house, he has Pluto. Pluto in Leo is this generational placement of people that were able to kind of gird themselves up, right? They were kind of born out of the greatest generation. These are the baby boomers, guys, right? Baby boomers are Pluto in Leo, right? So you've got about, the better part of about, 26 years or so kind of in this span where, actually a little less than that, about 22 or so, given the retrogrades. But Pluto in Leo is that part of saying, you know what, we have to do this for a greater good. We have to empower ourselves. You know what, if we're going to be the greatest country in the world, we better roll up our sleeves. We better dot our I's and cross our T's and get it done the right way. That's why people born between, and again, don't quote me from this, 1940 to about 1952, or 1938 to 1952, all kind of have this intrinsic nature of hard work, of understanding that. Well, here is Mr. Trump with Pluto in his 12th house. Well, what is the 12th house? It's a house of the undoing. Go big or go home, everybody. You'll hear me say that a lot about Jupiter too, but this type of placement allows Pluto to kind of sit in it. Now, when it's activated in transit, the outer rim here in the 12th house, where Venus and Mars are. By the way, I'm going to go ahead and make my pitch here. Maybe we find out that Melania just goes, you know what, that's it, I'm done. I'm going to get my money while I can. Because Venus going over, and by the way, it'll go over at a pure conjunct, where it's a close conjunct within 6 degrees. If I had to guess a date, I'm going to say June 14th. Happy birthday. Happy birthday, everybody. It's kind of funny. Yeah, it's funny. He talks about how much he doesn't drink and do drugs. Now's a good time to start, Donald. Anyways, so that's placement number 2. Now, we also have another placement with Pluto, as it is in Aquarius. Now, this is where I think it's going to get interesting. Pluto in transit is currently in the 5th house. Now, if he lives long enough to 2027, Pluto will be in opposition to him, right? That is a precarious placement, rarely happens in someone's life. TikTok, everybody, right? He will also have his Uranus in return, kind of based on the timing of this. I'd probably say another 3 years. What is he, 78? So yeah, between 82 and 84 is when you typically get that Uranus return. But the Pluto in Aquarius, in the waning minutes of Aquarius, we go back Pluto into Capricorn. So Pluto in Aquarius talks about personal accountability. It talks about having light shed on things. Trust me, we're going to get a ton of time back on this, but we're going to dip ourselves back into Capricorn. What is Capricorn? Let's take it for a second with the Pluto returns for the United States. And oh, by the way, this is still affecting that. We are still in a wide conjunct of Pluto, especially when it goes all the way back into Capricorn into about degree 26. Things are warming up. When Pluto moves back into Capricorn, it'll give us an opportunity to take a look at and tweak our rules and regulations as a country. Right now, we're in application, like, isn't this for the greater good? If we were a shamanistic society, Pluto in Capricorn, or Pluto in Aquarius, first of all, is about the greater good. We have a member of our tribe that is ill and doesn't do the right things, that is selfish. Donald needs to atone for this. We might have to kick him out, and he might have to earn his way back in. He might be put in the shit job role so that then he understands humility and starts to build back up. By the way, that's how we would have raised him once upon a time. A little too late for that. Pluto into Capricorn in a shamanistic society would be just this. Why aren't we functioning correctly? Why was he able to get away with this? Why are we not able to hold him accountable? Who's the judge here? Who was regulating him? Who raised him? That's what questions come with that. Do you guys understand how Pluto operates now? What's interesting is that as Pluto makes its transition in the 5th house, in his 5th house, we're about to see a boatload of creativity in how he's held accountable. Ankle bracelet, anyone? Is he going to run for election? I mean, there's no rules against it. Let's get that Pluto in Capricorn and do a little review and say, why is it that a man has been indicted over and again is able to run for president? And by the way, tactically, he started to run for president thinking he could get away with all of this stuff. By the way, let me know if you guys would be interested if I took the timing of everybody's announcement getting into the race and do a chart on all of it. Ron DeSantis, I'm going to tell you, was a horrible timing. And even though Mike Pence may have actually saved the union with his bravery, dare I say, by standing up to Donald Trump and telling him no for the first time in the history of ever, his timing was awful. You're doing it during a fixed Grand Cross. It's kind of like ordering dinner during a proctology exam. That's literally what's happening right now with all of these announcements. But do you know who's really, really interesting? I'll give you a hint. It rhymes with Williamson. I'm just telling you guys, she's following astrology and she's rocking it right now. So hang on. Hang on, everybody. All right, let's keep reviewing here in the chart. Saturn, sitting in Pisces. Yeah, I think I'm going to do a little special on that. There's about 7 or 8 of them. I just want to show how stupid it was that they announced, quite frankly. I'm going to let you know my bias right up front. And by the way, don't be surprised if a few more Democrats step in, up to and including our current vice president. I'm just going to give you that. Because the chaos, Captain Chaos, as we call him here, Donald J. Trump, has Saturn and Pisces in his 7th house. Well, screw you and your friends, buddy. Saturn in Pisces is up is down and down is up. His friends are enemies, his enemies are friends. And by the way, what an asshat to say he could stop the war just like that. No, you couldn't. If you could do that, you would just show culpability that you caused it. Are you ready to take that on too, Donald? Fun stuff, right? Now, his Chiron is in opposition of his natal Chiron. It moved over that about 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago. Maybe a little bit longer than that. It was earlier this year. I remember making comment on it on a Whiskey and Bagel show, which, by the way, thank you guys for tuning, liking, and subscribing. If you haven't caught the episode that came out yesterday, you are missing something big time. That was a great show, and I don't use superlatives often. It felt good, it sounded good, and your feedback has been incredible, so thank you. Chiron plays a part in someone's healing, and in sheer honesty, I think I'm ultimately disappointed that he didn't take any of the opportunities that he was given. He had opportunities to grow up. He had opportunities to do the right thing. He had the ability to step into this and say, you know, maybe I was a little overqualified or underqualified, and I'm trying to do the best I can. But his ego won't allow it. Oh, by the way, his sun in conjunct to his natal North Node, a lot of ego there, loads of ego. And by the way, Mars in Leo, and maybe let's go back to this. Let's go back to the 12th house here. Maybe this is his ego catching up to him, because the ego can be good and the ego can be negative, right? Oh yeah, we got to go back to this. So if the ego is represented in the 12th house, pretty naturally, if you ask me, the ego sometimes is really good. I can do it. I'm capable. It's also, oh, well, on the negative, it can be like, well, I didn't do that. Why would I ever do that? I'm too good for that. I'm blah, 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 blah. Twice the pride, twice the fall. So having those elements connected to it, and by the way, I'm pretty sure this is a trine action right now to with Mars and Chiron. This is the 12th to the 8th house, and it's ripping apart not only his intuition, but also his stability, and he's going to lose other people's money. Oh, have we talked about him being a grifter yet? By the way, look at that second house, his natal second house. He has Neptune. Well, that's a bullshit sign if I ever saw it. You and me, we're the same people. I've been fighting for the blah, blah, blah downtrodden since the day I was born. Neptune in the second house, he has no values. In Libra, it's a triple negative. And then Jupiter. In other words, he's going to strong-arm people in relationships. He's going to strong-arm people when it comes to money. Chiron in the second house, in Libra. If he had began a charitable event that was run well and helped other people, he could have been the greatest man on the face of the earth with that placement. He's got a stellium in his second house. He could have used it for good, and he didn't. That's what pisses me off about him. It's not his policy. It's not even his behavior, although it's abhorrent. But it is the fact that he has this opportunity. He has 4 stelliums in his chart. And stellium is where you have at least 3 placements, typically planets. They tend to focus more on planets with stellium. And in this case, the only true stellium is in the 11th house because he's got in his natal chart, because it is Venus, Saturn, and Mercury, right? But you can add in aspects and call it kind of a loose stellium and that sort of thing, because it does have that kind of impact or influence. He also his 4th house. And his 4th house is just, I mean, listen, he had no desire to raise a family. He's a bit of, and by the way, his Lilith in the 4th house in Sagittarius tells me he was not appropriate with Ivanka. Sorry. Just telling you. He looked at his children as something of possession. He didn't look at them as, he was selfish in terms of need over desire, over doing the right thing. Sorry, I just called him out. It's just the way it is. But I do want to take a look at the 9th house. And what a wrap up with this one. So Mercury is going to go plugging along there in Jupiter, or in Taurus. What the freak? He's great until he gets punchy, everybody. Go ahead and watch him. Be sure to like and subscribe and send all your friends here. Mercury in Taurus in his 10th house is a public undoing. It is a public opening. It is a public truth serum. Now, as it moves into Gemini, you're going to see the other side of it. By the way, Captain Chaos! And then when the Sun and Mercury become conjunct later on this month, that's going to be a doozy. Now, the 9th house is about not only your spiritual becoming, but also your travel, how you approach your faith, how you understand how the world works, and travel. I keep going back to travel. Sorry, I said it twice there. So right now, Jupiter, and by the way, it is the Sagittarius house if you're counting at home on the natal. And Jupiter ruling Sagittarius ruling Jupiter. I've heard it said both ways. I've had teachers talk about it both ways. And then you have the North Node. There's something destiny that's going on here about his learning, about his knowledge, about his comeuppance. And then he's got Uranus sitting there going, I just want to do something different. I don't want to be here anymore. You're telling me to do the right thing, and I just want to get out of here. Conjunct with Mercury right now. He's going to be a blathering idiot. But when Mercury hits the Sun and it becomes conjunct, look out. He is going to swing. He is going to drop trowel. And maybe some of those documents will come out about 9/11. Maybe some of those documents about the moon landing are going to come out. Maybe we're going to find out all the deets on the JFK thing. Aren't there a lot of things that maybe there's been constant cover-up? Maybe he pulls out all the paperwork and says, I just want the world to see this right now because Edward Snowden wasn't wrong. Things just got real over there on the other side of the camera, huh? The Echo is back? How is the Echo back? Echo 1. I'm going to give this 30 seconds because I'm really on a roll here, everybody. Hit the road, Jack. How's that? Better? I hope so. Maybe it's that way. I think they don't like what I'm talking about. Did you ever think of that? And by the way, when did the Echo come in when I talked about him exposing the other stuff? I'm not being political here. I'm really not. So let's wrap this up with the 9th house. There are 2 windows in which he's a flight risk. One of the windows is actually currently. Now you better, huh? They really don't like what I was saying. You know, just because I wouldn't sign on the dotted line doesn't mean I don't like you guys. You heard me. How about now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me? So I'm going to drive this home. I'm going to bring this. Oh, that's why. I'm going to get right up on the camera here. Good. Okay. So, by the way, my microphone is now right there. I've got all this equipment and I don't know what to do with it sometimes. So, as we take a look at the 9th house, this is how I identify the flight risk that he is. I don't think it's spirit. So you look at the 12th house and the crazy insanity that comes across, thanks everybody, where the ninth house has this activity of Uranus. And by the way, it stays in Uranus for almost another like year for him, 2 years. Jupiter's going to move on just fine. But when you take a look at where you're going to go and how you're going to go about it, this placement of both the third house and the ninth house with the north and south node, that south node in Scorpio makes him a sneaky little bastard now, doesn't it? Sorry, calling it like it is. Oh, and by the way, save your emails about disrespecting a former president, please. The ninth house is about the travel. The third house is about how you're going to go about it. He has the capacity to just rip the Band-Aid off and say, he's a scorched earth guy. Look at what Putin's doing in Russia right now and Ukraine. I'm going to burn it down. If I can't win, I'm taking my ball, I'm going home. Don't you think Donald Trump is built the same way? Oh, I'm just going to throw the classified documents all over the place. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go call up Bernstein, because whichever one he was sitting with, that basically turned over all of his notes that he got indicted on for January 6th. By the way, guys, we haven't even gotten to January 6th yet. This is just shit he stole from the White House and tried to broker deals to say, I can't show this. And by the way, if you're not following along at home, part of the reason why Jack Smith was able to close on this indictment is because he had an audio of him literally saying, after the time that he said they're all declassified, he said, oh, I can't show you that because it's classified. He basically contradicted himself when it mattered. Oh, and by the way, he did it for a living, as a job. And it's amazing how, from a character standpoint, which, by the way, you can take a look at what his character is. Look at how lopsided he is. His money house is full. His 12th house is a fun time. The 11th house is about using other people again and again. The 10th house is, it's me and only me. And by the way, I'm going to show you one side and do another. I'm Gemini in the 10th house. Love you loads. Donald Trump is going to flee this country. Donald Trump is going to go to Dubai, play in a golf tournament, and forget to come home. Donald Trump doesn't give a rat's ass about this country. He never has. He never will. We'll freeze his assets. His kids have already distanced him. He led a conspiracy to overthrow our government with a path to trick us into the idea that we do not live in a democracy. The dude is toast. By the way, you can divide up every conflict that you have with another person into 2 categories. I talked about it on Whiskey and Bagels. I'll say it again here. There is category number 1 when you say the words, who's the adult here? Is there just a level of immaturity that we can't overcome? Who's the child? Is this like 6th grade stuff? Every single time my 10-year-old, my 11-year-old comes home and says, hey, this person did this and they said that and blah, blah, blah. And I go, what are we in 6th grade? He's like, yeah, Dad, I'm in 6th grade. Facts. But I expect it from him. I don't expect it from the president. Number 2, the other reason is to say, where are you hurt? Donald Trump is a very hurt man. That is where I have compassion for him. He didn't get the hug. He didn't get the pony. But he turned everybody into the enemy. He was conditioned to look for the out, for the enemy, and what's in it for him. That man has lost more money than I will ever make. That man has stolen more money than I'll ever see. He has held a higher rank position than I couldn't even dream of becoming, and I'm also too smart to become the president. I don't want to play that game. That's a lifetime commitment. Not him. He shows up late to the party and thinks he's in charge. This 9th house is an escape clause. The dude is going to run. It will be an international manhunt. But not before they take away all of his toys, disgrace his family, and oh, by the way, Eric, Donald Jr., I like fries with that. I feel bad for his children that were conditioned in a way that wasn't fair to them, but they're grown-ups now. Melania is a lot of things, and by the way, I really hope she drops Trow next. I'm looking at his chart, and I'm going to tell you, Venus T-squared to the nodes in the 12th and the 9th house, oh, she's going to bring a lesson. She's not going to go out like, hey, why don't you bury me on the 14th green? Who fucking does that? Right? But having his natal Venus in the 11th house in Cancer, having been squared to the north and south node for the last 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks, now he's got Venus transit T squared to his north and south nodes. We ain't talking about love. I say it's rotten to the core. By the way, can we do a call back to Tina here and say what's love got to do with it? I think Melania pulls the trigger on this and just says, what's in it for me? I need $50 million to live, to sustain any lifestyle, and I've seen the bank accounts, and I know I can at least get that. You know, if a couple of one-night stands are going to be worth $400,000, I should get $50 million. And I think she'll actually make that argument. And oh, by the way, it's going to be in public. So his flight risk is now. I'm also going to tell you mid-July is another timing. I'm also going to tell you the end of the year is part of that timing, just based on the chart that I've seen. And then May of next year lights up like a Christmas tree. I think May of next year is when things are either going to trial or is when he makes his move. I think he's just going to see his polling numbers shit the bed. I think he's going to realize the ghost is up. I think he's going to blame everybody under the sun and every lawyer that he can't find. Someone told me, I have a friend of mine that is an adjunct at George Mason, and there was an intern that had literally just passed the bar that got a phone call from a lawyer, from a legal firm that said, we have a very important case we'd like to hire you for. He walked in, and by the way, he was a lifetime Republican. Walked in, they sat down and they said, when can you start? And they were like, why? And they said, we need you to go through these documents. And he said, you're representing Trump? Well, you have to sign these disclosures. And by the way, they broke every rule by doing it that way. But he said, I am not interested in joining a firm that's currently representing Donald Trump. So these law firms are taking it on the chin with new recruits. And by the way, new recruits are your lifeline in D.C. You need to get them out of George Mason. You got to get them out of Georgetown. You got to get them out of Villanova. You got to find top-notch, top-tier, mid-tier, lower class. Right? Yeah, maybe it was Spirit confirming. I'm kind of nailing this. I am telling you, the deal that he's got with the Saudis, with the whole live thing and everything else with the golf tournament. By the way, he's ruined another thing. He's ruined the PGA. He tried to ruin football back in the 80s when he had the New Jersey Generals, the Orlando Renegade. And I can't be the only one that remembers the USFL. I was 10 years old and I thought, who would want to play for that crappy league? I was a Joe Montana guy. I was a Phil Simms guy. Anyways. So there you have it, guys. He's a chart and a half waiting to happen. He's got some serious challenges. I also think that he could do us right by telling us the truth. And it might be the truth that everybody else doesn't want to hear. His last defense is, look, everybody else. Oh, here's what happened in the Iran-Contra scandal. Here's what happened down in Bolivia. Here's what happened down in everything else. Here's what happened in Turkey. Here's what happened in Ukraine. Oh, am I to charge? Yeah, but Putin didn't want to pay me anymore. He's got no choice but brutal honesty. Can he do it? Yes. That's the whole point. That is my disappointment of his chart. If he plays to his strengths now, he could show the world how much America has it wrong for so long. He is part of the problem, but he could set it right. It's kind of like Darth Vader. He's killing all those people, and then at the end it's like, take off my mask so I may see you with my own eyes. Hey, listen, those of you that have followed religion, if you get the convert on the deathbed, did you still get him? That's his chart, guys. He may pull the great Zamboni and clean up the entire slate by saying, here's the real truth. The witch hunt for me? Is that the reason why they're going after him? I don't know. He did something wrong. Hey, Joe, good to see you. Marnie, spot on. Haiti, thank you for the confirmation. Yeah, Trish, low-hanging fruit. And by the way, in the mid-70s, I hear they hang really low. So anyways, I'm not going to tell you my own experience with that. I am 50 now. But here we are, guys. We're up against it, and we're seeing this national tragedy happen. And this chart is absolutely designed to still be the anti-hero hero. You know, I try and think of like characters, and Darth Vader is a really good one. But you know, there's people in our lives that play roles. And by the way, go back and listen to what Penny and I talked about. There are seasons for all people, right? There are seasons for all dynamics for people. There are seasons that sometimes people are our heroes and sometimes they're our enemy. When I was growing up, little Brandon story. When I was growing up, I loved Kirby Puckett. If you're from the Twin Cities, so when I grew up, my dad was from St. Paul. Growing up, I used to watch Greg Nettles, Willie Randolph, Dave Winfield, Dave Righetti, Rick Cerrone, Thurman Munson. The list goes on. I would watch them, but then when I would go to sleep, my dad would tell me stories about Tony Oliva, Harmon Killebrew. I was just consumed with like all of these stories of baseball and greatness and all this other stuff. And I told you that story to tell you this one. Kirby Puckett fan, followed the Twins. And Kirby was my guy. He was realistically only about 8 years older than me. Like he was a kid, but I could look up to him. He wasn't that much older than me. He was like my older brother. And by the way, we do look alike. I really need to, but his playing was awesome. He was 5'8", but he played like he was 10 feet tall. He would hit home runs, hits to the gap. His fielding in the outfield, he would run everything down. He would climb the baggie and catch home runs and pull them back. He was a Paul Bunyan-like character to me. And then he stopped playing baseball. And then he started to go blind. He was hit in the eye by a pitcher by the name of Martinez, and they say that his macular degeneration wasn't connected to that, but I couldn't get rid of it. I always looked at Martinez as a bit of an enemy here, because he always threw him inside. But he lost his eyesight, and he became frustrated, and he had glaucoma issues, and there were sugar issues. He became diabetic, and he had mood swings, and he ended up getting arrested for domestic violence. I was absolutely crushed. And I remember I had a baseball game that day. And I used to listen to a very kind of like a local baseball or local talk show, sports talk show. During this time, sports talk shows were everything. And it was a possible career for me. So I would listen to it a lot. And there was this guy by the name of John Graney. If you were in upstate New York, you know who John Graney is. He was on every radio station under the sun. He always would talk sports. He came back with Paul Vandenberg, kind of did him a favor and ran his sports desk for a while. Anyways, I told you a story to tell you this one. John Graney came on and he said, I really like this Puckett kid, but I can't have him getting arrested like this. The charges were eventually dropped, but he was marred. He was marred for a long time. And I thought to myself, my hero just fell. I thought to myself, everything I knew, if he had gone into obscurity and nobody ever knew him and he waved his hat every Kirby Puckett day from there on in, we would have just loved him for who he was, not his struggle. In a time where we didn't have social media, we kind of knew his dirt. And I wonder how much of all of this is that we just know all the dirt. Maybe our consciousness is actually about knowing all of the challenges. And maybe Donald Trump is the perfect person to show us all of them. As much as I think he's an absolute dipshit and a useful idiot, he might be the one that leads us into knowing all of our faults so we can actually fix them. What I learned from Kirby Puckett, everybody's human. I'm going to give you guys a hard tap. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Sorry about all of the sound issues. I figured it out. And not a moment too soon, might I add. But I'm going to give you guys a hard tap to remind you to love and care for one another. And you can change people's lives every day with how you treat them and how you love them. All right, guys. Thanks again and keep going. Thanks for tuning in. Oh, like and subscribe, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I'm announcing an astrology class. It's a 101 class, so if you don't really fully understand what the heck I'm talking about, take this class and we'll break it down. Love you guys. Joanne, thank you so much. Contributor on the bees. Everybody should be in it. Thanks again, guys. Keep going.